Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and today we're going to go over the LEC. We've got 10 teams to get through. You're going to do the same thing as the LCS video, just go in reverse order from the standings from last season. So let's start with Team Vitality. And Vitality is a team that I liked a lot last year going into the split. I think that Jigenda didn't play as well as they could. Skeens is a jungler that I didn't like at all. Malitza is a good player. I'm surprised that they went to leader over Malitza. Malitza had a bad split, but I think that's more about the entire team's failure than it is about them specifically. Leader, they're going to have a fundamentally different kind of playstyle with leader, which could be good, but could also be pretty bad. Because like the problem is when you have somebody who's playing a lot of these like assassin champions or melee champions, it's a lot more volatile. If Selfmade is able to play as well as it did last split for Fnatic, then I think it could be fine. So they have a new top laner, SLT. I'm not sure who this player is. I don't know anything about them. Maybe they name changed. I don't know. Selfmade, very good jungler, probably the first or second best jungler in Europe right now. Leader, I don't think he's going to be a top 2 or 3 mid laner just because there are so many good mid laners in Europe. But that's really the hope, is that they can find a lot of good matchups for them in the mid lane where teams are like lazily drafting control mages against them, and then he has a pocket pick against the different champions that get locked in. So that could be a good red side strategy for them. But when they're blind picking champions, it's going to be dependent on there being some good like melee champions that are blind pickable, just like overpowered champions. So like if Akali's broken, or if Lee Sin is in their minds broken. I don't think it's actually broken, but that's kind of what you'd hope for Malitza. Yasuo, well I guess Yasuo, Yone, Zed, like a lot of those types of champions. Very volatile playstyle. Then we have in the bot lane Crown Shot and Labrav. I liked Comp a lot. I thought that the move from Comp to Crown Shot was kind of like a side grade, but people like Crown Shot. I get that. So what can we expect from a team that has these players? I'm gonna throw it into the sheet again, and then I'll probably post this somewhere, probably in Discord. One. So Vitality, with the talent of this team, having Selfmade, I think Selfmade's a gigantic upgrade. Going from probably the worst jungler in the league to the best jungler in the league is a huge come up. I think that people are probably overrating the bot lane still, because of how much I like Selfmade. I would like to think that they could finish 5th or 6th, maybe 4th. So 4 to 6 is their upside. And then their downside, I'll have to think more about that as we go through other teams. Next up, Astralis. So Astralis only made one change. They went from Nuke Duck to Magifelix during the split, and that's a big upgrade. Nuke Duck was easily the worst player in the league last split, I think, and has been for a couple of splits. Really held back Origin for a long time. So what can we say about Astralis? White Knight had a lot of good matches, but I think that was more of like circumstance. It wasn't that they were some kind of amazing player. I'm not a huge believer in White Knight long term. Zanzara, same thing. Fun to listen to on the analyst desk or as part of panels, but just not a great player by any means. Jessica and Promiscu, they're probably one of the worst bot lanes in the league. And then Magifelix is okay, but is not one of the best players in the league in their position. So this team is more of a bottom-dwelling team, I think. I would say that their worst-case scenario is 10th. Their best-case scenario is probably 6th. I'd be shocked if they got much higher. It's really like 6 to 8. Like I think that the range is a little bit lower. One sec. Next up, Excel. Man, insane. So, Excel, they have Cries, Dan. They went from Chekolade to Nuke Duck, which is a huge step backwards. That's kind of insane to me that they would make that sort of move. Then they have Patrick and Denick. Denick is not good. Torre really wasn't that good either, though. It's a downgrade, so I think they're another contender for worst team in the league. The thing about XL is that their playstyle makes them seem like they're in a lot of close matches, when in reality they don't have actual chances to win the game. They just have scaling threats, keep saying to themselves, we can outscale, and then don't get there. So, don't like the team. They're going to be a team that I'm like. You probably don't even really want to play teams against them that often in DFS. I just think it's a really bad team. In a best case scenario, they have Cries, who can play scaling top laners. They have Dan, who's a bad jungler. They have Nuke Duck, who's a bad mid laner. They have Patrick, who has shown the ability to carry, and then you have Denick, who is a replacement level support. So I don't know. You have to just turtle until Patrick is strong. That's their playstyle, and that's a bad playstyle in most metas. The only way that this could work is if you have Nuke Duck playing for the jungler. The jungler is able to get advantageous matchups. Top goes even, bot goes even. Get into like dragon fights and Rift Herald fights and Baron even, and win fights. So, do we have any reason to think that Dan and Nuke Duck are going to positively contribute to those team fight scenarios? Personally, no, I don't think so. I think that it's just a huge liability having those two players in the center of your team. Pretty horrible moves. If anything, I think the move was to get away from Dan and to keep Chekolade. Maybe Chekolade said, hey, I don't want to play for you guys. You guys suck. I hope that's what happened, because they suck. All right, next up, Misfits. Everybody knows I have a soft spot in my heart for Misfits. They are one of the teams that I like supporting in Europe, because they have really good upside. They have strong players, and the thing is, with a team like this, they're like just a better version of XL. So I don't like the playstyle, but there are spots in League of Legends DFS where like being overweight on a team like Misfits will get you chances to win slates. So Aggressivo and Hyrit, I don't care who plays, they're roughly the same in my eyes. Razork had a pretty bad year, or a pretty bad split after having a good rookie season. I think they had a rookie season last year. Vetio is okay, not that much better than Fabivin, but they're a younger player, so they do have a chance to grow in the team and prove that they are better, but just not a great player yet. Kabe and Vander, really solid bot lane. Kabe is very similar to Patrick in the sense that they just want to scale for the late game. That can hurt you a decent amount in the early game, but I'm willing to let a team like Misfits do that just because they're better at it than a team like XL. So I don't see them being. Their worst case scenario is probably 8th still, because they're definitely going to be better than XL and Astralis in my mind. And then with Vitality, I think Vitality could compete with them straight up. But I think that the upside of Misfits is higher. So if Misfits gets a really good split out of Razork, Vetio, and Kabe, I think you can see them as high as 4 to 6. So that's really just truly middle of the table. Not too impressive, but the difference is like they're going to lose some games where you're just like, how could they possibly lose to that team? And they're going to win some games where you think to yourself, how could they possibly win that game? That's just kind of who they are. And maybe there are some roster moves that I'm not remembering, and maybe that pushes them up a little higher. SK Gaming. So SK Gaming had a relatively good split last year considering the talent on their team, but they made probably the worst moves of the offseason. Genax, pretty good player, league average top laner. Tinks was the best player on their team last year, by far, and they benched Tinks to put treats in the jungle. Like, is it possible that this works out? Yes. Does that mean it's a good move? Does that justify the move? No. Blue, Jezu, and Jesus coming back, I mean, that's just wild to me. So SK is a team that I will be actively rooting against for getting rid of tanks. So you need to take everything that I say about them with a grain of salt, because I will admittedly hate them. I think that this significantly limits their upside. I think that they're really a 6th to 8th place team, which would put them in the same range as XL and Astralis. Like, I think those three teams are definitely the three worst teams in the league so far. Let's keep going. Now we have Fnatic. Okay. So, Fnatic, everyone knows that I hate Fnatic. Just what a horrible organization. Yamato Cannon is their coach still, which is incredible. All right, so Adam. Adam is coming from Carmine Corp, I believe. He had a really good MSI. He's a younger player. I understand why you'd want to bring somebody like that in. The thing that I don't understand is getting rid of Selfmade and transferring Bwipo into the jungle. I think that Bwipo is definitely capable of playing jungle. There are a lot of champions that Bwipo already plays that can make their way into the jungle, like Volibear, and he's a strong enough mechanical player to figure out the other champions. I like Bwipo a lot. I don't have any issues with this move, really. It's just that it requires you to lose Selfmade, and Selfmade is a better player than Bwipo and is better at jungle than Bwipo. Is it possible that Bwipo looks better than Selfmade this split because they have a better team, like better talent surrounding them? Yes, that could certainly happen, but it's unlikely to me. I think that Selfmade should be able to carry their team, whereas Bwipo is not going to be able to carry their team. But at the same time, Bwipo is, I mean, this is the right time for Bwipo to make this move, because last year you had a lot of carry junglers. That would have been his time to shine if he was a jungler. But at the same time, he's the sort of player who will play tanks when your team needs tanks, so they should have a flexible champion pool. I think Bwipo can like adapt to the meta pretty well in general as a top laner. I would expect him to do the same as a jungler. Just a very cerebral player. Niski, one of the most overrated players in Europe. Not a good player. Super dependent on having a good jungler on their team. So if Bwipo is as good as Bwipo can be, then Niski will probably look better. If Fnatic is winning games, Niski will look better. But in the early and mid game, Niski is not the type of player who is actively going out and creating those advantages. They're often teaming up with their jungler, looking for 2v1s and stuff like that, using tempo to gain advantages in the early and mid game. And those are more of team plays instead of individual outplays. That's probably my biggest gripe with Niski, is how people give him credit for being a good player when he's just not, in my mind. A lot of better mid laners in Europe. And then bot lane we have Upset and Hylissang. Upset and Hylissang are just another better version of Patrick, a better version of Kabe. I think that Upset and Kabe are very similar in terms of skill, but Hylissang is better than Vander. It's very ugly a lot of the time. Like, it looks bad, but it gets the job done for the most part. So Fnatic, with these changes, I mean, this could be the worst Fnatic we've seen in years, potentially. I think that the downside would be 6 to 8. I could see them really, maybe not 8th, because I think a couple of the other teams are just much worse than them still. And then their upside, if everything breaks the right way, if Adam's truly a carry player, if Bwipo successfully gets the jungle figured out pretty fast, I think that they could just be playing around top lane. That'd be pretty cool. So I think their upside would be 4 to 6. I don't expect them to compete for a championship with this roster. But if it turns into like a super slow meta where you can play through the top lane in the early game, carve out advantages, let your bot lane just kind of squeeze into the middle game, I mean, it could work. That's like the go-to playstyle, I think, that makes sense with their players and their talent. So it would be like a weak side bot team, which is fine, I guess. Shulaka. We have Broken Blade. Broken Blade is a pretty good player. they're going from Gilius to Cure. I think that's pretty weird. Um, Gilius was their best player a lot of last year, and their playstyle is just very good. This is very similar to like swapping out Sven for King because again, people are gonna say, "Oh, Cure, getting a chance on the LEC again. They deserve a shot. They're a younger player." Blah blah blah. In reality, Cure is the same age, uh, is a month younger than Cure. So then um, this needs to be like a win now move. When it's unlikely to be a win now move. Like you're not getting that much better going from Gilius to Cure. Maybe there's like stylistic differences. They think that Gilius was never a true carry player and isn't really a tank player either. So they're more in like that Lee Sin, Elise kind of territory where like if that's the type of meta where you can play against the tanks, get the tempo advantage in the early game because of the champion selection, then Gilius is probably better in that scenario, but just not a high upside move in my opinion. Then we have in the mid lane, they're going from Abadage to Nuclear Int. I think that has to be a gigantic downgrade. Abadage is a legit player, and this is just their backup from Academy. I do like their coach. I like Dylan Falco. I think he's a good coach. Did he leave? All right, he's still there. Um, that's not good. I don't like this. This is bad. So Shulaka, their downside, they could be one of the worst teams in the league. Their upside, probably fifth to sixth. Uh, that's not good. That's a big step backwards. Because they're gonna have to remember how to play the not remember but learn how to play the game again. It's gonna be much different with Cure and Nuclear in. Broken Blade's a pretty good player, at least league average top laner there. Neon and Limit. Limit had some really good matches, and is like trying to push themselves into the Hillsong mold, which if you can accomplish that at this stage in your career, I mean, good for you. Like that'd be a big benefit for the team. I'm not a huge fan of Neon though. So yeah, not looking good for Schalke. They overperformed last split. Then they lost two of their best players. Not a recipe for success. All right, now we're getting into the three actual teams in Europe, and this, I mean, like I don't want to get too far into this, but like this is why I don't necessarily agree with everyone who says like Europe is so much better than North America. Like there are three teams in Europe that are good, and then there's everyone else. Like Fnatic's not even in that scenario anymore. Vitality potentially could be in that range, but it's unlikely. I think Misfits could maybe get up into that range, but it's unlikely. Like even if whatever team ends up in fourth place will probably be much worse than the top three teams, in my mind. So we have Armut. Armut had a good MSI relative to expectations. I think Elyoya had an okay MSI. I think that I'm probably too. I think I'm probably like accurate in terms of my assessment of Elyoya. Um, but even with that being said, I think like there have just been such a high occurrence of good matches from Elyoya that maybe I should think that I have him underrated in my mind. I think everyone else is overrating him, but there's like a happy medium between like where everybody thinks he is versus where I think he is, and I think that I'm probably too low, they're probably too high. Um, a good player. It'll be interesting to see what happens if we do get into a tank meta, because like with or not a tank meta, but like not true carry champions. Because like if somebody like Volibear or Trundle, or Nautilus, like Nautilus could become a thing very soon. If some of those champions are more popular and easy to blind pick and help your team out in the draft and get you into predictable situations in the mid and late game, then a lot of El Yoyo's agency in the early game is going to be taken away, and a lot of their winning chances are going to be taken away in the early game. Because when you're playing more aggressive champions, you can carve out an edge over the enemy jungler. That's always going to benefit the more mechanically skilled, more aggressive player. It's going to look bad when they fail, but it's going to look even better when they win. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that scenario, but even if that's the case, I think that Mad Lions has shown that they're definitely one of the 3 or 4 best teams in Europe. So I think worst case scenario, they could end up in 4th. Worst case scenario, they could end up in 4th just from having a bad split. I don't think that's likely. And then their upside is coming in 1st place because they've already done that. I don't think it's likely that they come in 1st place, but I think that they could come in 1st place. Then we have Rogue. Rogue is another team that I put in the like XL Misfits Fnatic scenario or team style, where they were a much slower team, and then last year they started playing a lot faster. I think Adewale is still a very good player. Inspired's a very good jungler. Larson's a very good mid laner. Hansama's a very good AD carry. And Trimby had a good first split. I think that Trimby's probably a little overrated. I think they're getting carried somewhat by the rest of their team. But they're good enough to be one of the top 3 teams. I think that Rogue is a less volatile team than Mad Lions, so I don't think that Rogue could end up in 4th place. I think that their worst case scenario is really 3rd place. And again, Rogue has the ability to come in 1st, just because they're a very skilled team, very talented, easily one of the 3 most talented teams in Europe. Like, you look at the players on this team and you compare them to the players on Fnatic. They're better in basically every single role. There's not much else to say. And somebody commented on my last video like, "Oh, this is horrible commentary" or whatever. It's like, I've given my opinion on teams so many times. I'm not going to just say stuff to say stuff. It's like, if something has changed, I'm going to tell you it's changed. If it hasn't changed, then yes, you're going to hear the same thing again. That's just how it works. I mean, if you want somebody who completely changes their mind every time anything happens, then this is not the place for you. And then the best team in Europe, in my mind, still G2. Mad Lions had a good split last year. Did a good job taking out Rogue and G2 in the playoffs. I don't think that was the likely scenario, but it happened, and you have to give them a lot of respect for that. But G2, I think, is still the best team. I'm surprised that they did not get self-made. I think that would have made them a legitimate team for Worlds this year. That would have been a huge upgrade over Jankos. Jankos will be probably the biggest beneficiary of the upcoming meta changes if we get into a tank meta. He will be the best jungler in Europe if that's the case. Maybe best isn't the way to say it. It's not like he's not going to go from being, middle of the pack or lower end mechanical ability to the best mechanical player. He's going to go from a very strong strategic player in a meta that doesn't really benefit strategy, and then he's going to move into a strategic meta where it's more about maneuvering around the map, carving out small leads in the early game, keeping the game close, or finding spots to exploit in the early game and then completely steamrolling the opponent. That's what Jankos is really good at, because the rest of the team allows him to play that way. When we get tank versus tank, it's even more important. So I think Jankos will have a good split. Cap's best mid laner in the league. Reckless, top 3 AD carry in the league. Mickey, top 3 support in the league. Wonder, top 3 or 4 top laner in the league. It'll be interesting to see how they match up against the other top laners, like Wonder against Adewale. I still do prefer Wonder a little bit, but they're both most likely going to try to go even in those matchups. Wonder against Armut is kind of a 50-50 now, which is pretty impressive for Armut. If Adam is as good as he was for Carmine Corp, then Wonder against Adam will be interesting because it'll be a top laner who's getting resources and is trying to win the lane against someone who's just trying to go 50-50 in lane. But as the game slows down in the upcoming meta, G2 is going to be better and better because teams are going to be less willing to make those early aggressive plays. G2 will continue to make early aggressive plays, and then they'll always have the ability to like outscale or get to a team fight that they don't have any business winning and winning it anyways. Because that's just who G2 is. They kind of have a mental lock on most teams. So in terms of teams' chances to win the split, I think G2's downside is third. I think that their upside is obviously first. So we have 3 teams who I think have a realistic chance of winning the championship. If I had to put percentages on it, I'd probably say G2 is around 40%, and then Rogue and Mad Lions are both 30%. I think matchup-wise, it depends on which side of the bracket has 2 of these teams. But 2 of these 3 teams will most likely be in the finals. So that's basically it. I don't have any lines on like futures and stuff like that. Maybe I'll talk to the esports department guys about that. But I think that the LEC, the big change for me, the big takeaway that I have from looking at these teams is that the gap between the good teams and the bad teams is even more extreme than it was in the past. Like you have G2, Rogue, and Mad Lions are 3 good teams. Then you have Fnatic, Misfits, and Vitality, who are the most likely teams to come in 4 through 6. Then you have a team like Shulaka, who I'd be shocked if they could figure it out. Like they have probably the biggest range of outcomes for any team in the league this split. And then you have the 3 bad teams who are SK, XL, and Astralis. Now, this doesn't mean that they'll necessarily finish the standings in this way, but I'll be picking according to their talent, like I generally do, and that means that I'll have a lot of no-brainers, like Misfits against anybody outside the top 3. I'll probably pick them, unless it's Fnatic, that'll be close, and Vitality, that'll be close. So exciting. We're about 2 weeks away from League of Legends being back in full swing. The last couple of months, I guess it's been like a full month. It's a little boring not having it around, but it's kind of whatever. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any disagreements with my picks. Maybe give an actual reason instead of saying that it's bad. That's a wild thought, but maybe consider doing that. But again, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you later.